Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. We have a two-part ASEAN series, which is jointly brought to you by Singapore Logistics Association and Singapore Business Federation. We are grateful to be supported by Singapore Customs, LTA, and Enterprise Singapore. We encourage you to share your questions in the Q&A box so that agencies, Singapore Customs and LTA, and the operator can address them. We will start the session shortly, and in the meantime, we will encourage you to scan the QR codes in the slide so that you can receive updates on upcoming events organized by either SBF or SLA. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Stanley Lim, Chairman of the Internationalization Subcommittee of Singapore Logistics Association, to give his opening remarks. Over to you, Mr. Lim, please.
Good morning, everyone. Fellow members of Singapore Logistics Association, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Singapore Logistics Association and the Singapore Business Federation, I would like to extend our warmest welcome to you and thank you for joining us this morning. We have put together this series for our members to provide more clarity on the initiatives launched for ASEAN, such as the ASEAN's Customs Transit System, in short ACTS, and the ASEAN Single Window, ASW. In a nutshell, ACTS aims to help a truck can travel from one point of loading, the departure point, to a destination, arrival in a different country with fewer obstacles and delays. This is news for the logistics operators because there is no need for a different customs declaration at each border and no need to transfer goods to a different truck in each country. In Singapore, ACTS is coordinated by Singapore Customs and the Land Transport Authority, LTA, and we are grateful to have them both present today. In addition, Madam Fauzia from Singapore Customs will be sharing updates about ASW, the ASEAN Single Window, which some of you may be familiar with, as it is the electronic exchange of Form D. Please feel free to ask questions after the presentations. We are honored to have Mr. Toh Yew Jin from Land Transport Authority this morning, who will field questions regarding the ASEAN Goods Vehicle Cross-Border Permit, in short AGV CBP, during the Q&A session later. I sincerely thank you and wishing you a very fruitful session ahead. Thank you very much.
And now we will invite Madam Fauzia from Singapore Customs to start the sharing. Madam Fauzia, please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to be here. Today I'll be presenting on the ASEAN Trade Facilitation, ASEAN Customs Transit System, or ACTS, and the ASEAN Single Window. I think these two topics may not be new to many of you. You might have seen our recent releases with respect to the implementation of these two initiatives. But before I go into the ACTS and ASW presentation itself, I would like to give, next please. I would like to give a brief introduction on what is the ASEAN Trade Facilitation. Next, please. Under the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, or ATIGA, the Article 47 do spell out the principles on trade facilitation as shown here. This will make respective ASEAN member countries to be obligated to provide transparency that is made available their legislation, regulatory and procedural information in a timely manner at no cost or reasonable cost to the traders. This is usually published perhaps on their customs or authorities website for the public information. And there should be an avenue for communications and consultations. That is, member states should endeavor to facilitate effective mechanisms for exchanges with the business and trade community, including rules and procedures. Next, the simplification and practicability and efficiency. Member states are also required to simplify their trade rules and procedures. In addition, in the implementation of these rules, there shouldn't be any discriminatory measures. They must be applied non-discriminatory, all these trade rules procedures based on market principles. And at the same time, consistency and predictability. That is, member states should apply trade rules and procedures in a consistent, predictable, and uniform manner, and applied in a non-discretionary manner. There should be a standard SOP for the authorities that implement these measures. Next, please. The other basic principle under the ATIGA is there must be harmonization, standardization, and recognition of standards. Implementing the rules and procedures based on international standards for legitimate objectives, for example, protection of health, safety, or public morals, and conservation of exhaustible natural resources. And at the same time, members should work out to develop mutual recognition arrangements for standards and conformity assessment results. This is to ensure that we apply our regulation or procedures in a more harmonized and standardized manner. Next, the modernization and use of new technology. Member states should regularly update and review trade rules and procedures, including new information and new business practices, and where appropriate, adopt modern techniques and new technology. And there should be due process where access to adequate legal appeal procedures add greater certainty to trade transactions in accordance with the applicable laws of respective member states. And finally, there should be close cooperation between both governments and businesses and provide open channels of communication. Next, please. Okay, so how should this benefit the traders? So the key benefits would be there will be or should be greater certainty in complying with regulations in each country. There should be greater clarity on customs requirements and trade procedures, and meaning that there should be certainty in how you can move your goods across borders. At the same time, this would expedite the release of low-risk consignments and air express consignments. In addition, the enhanced trade facilitation measures provided to legitimate operators, such as our authorized traders, would have who have been assessed to be of low risk, would help facilitate low-risk consignments. And also reduced lead time for clearance of goods, expedite release of goods upon arrival, and which would minimize loss or deterioration of perishable goods in particular. At the same time, greater certainty in the determination of duties and taxes payable. So I think that's why we would encourage traders who to be aware of all these developments. And then if you face any problems, cross-border transactions, you could come forward to the authorities so that we could also provide the avenues to consult the other authorities and for an explanation of why certain measures are implemented, especially those that are applied not in a non-discriminatory manner. Next, please. Okay, let's start now on the ASEAN Customs Transit Systems, or the ACTS. Next, please. Maybe we should play the video to show you what exactly is ACTS before I run through the individual slides on the ACTS. The video, please.
ASEAN, a big expanding market. ASEAN and the EU share common objectives for economic integration and free trade. The ASEAN Economic Community is a reality, driving forwards a single market and a production base, and connecting a highly competitive region, fully integrated with the global economy. ASEAN acts as a focus for the free movement of goods, services, and investments. Together, the 10 member states generated $3 trillion in 2018, making ASEAN the 5th largest economy in the world. With the highest potential growth globally, ASEAN is set to be the world's 4th largest economy by 2050. The ASEAN Customs Transit System, or ACTS, creates a trade facilitation platform for the free movement of goods in the region. Developed jointly by ASEAN and the European Union, ACTS removes the need for multiple customs declarations at borders. ACTS requires only one electronic declaration, one guarantee, and one truck for the entire journey. This means faster, more reliable on-time deliveries and lower transport costs, backed by state-of-the-art tracking and monitoring capabilities. ACTS ensures the safety and security of society, protecting public revenues and protecting public values. Regional integration and sustainable growth are values shared by ASEAN and the European Union. Driving towards the ASEAN Community Vision 2025, ACTS will play a key role in building the regional economy, taking the single market to the next level.
Thank you. So I hope you have a good insight of the objective of why ASEAN is having the ACTS. Okay, so the agenda for today with respect to ACTS, I will explain to you on what is ACTS, who can participate, the key features and benefits of ACTS, where can you transport goods under ACTS, the cross-border trucking under COVID-19, the future plans, how to participate, and the authorized transit trader. Next, please. So what is ACTS? It is a regional initiative to facilitate the transit movement of goods in ASEAN. It uses a computerized custom transit management system that is developed by ASEAN with the technical assistance provided by an external consultant, which is Arise Plus, as we've seen on the video. And it enables goods to be transported at the moment only by road, departing from one ASEAN member states, transiting in one or more AMS, and finally to the destination in another ASEAN member state. It's under a single transit regime. Okay, next, please. Who can participate? It is open to all traders, which include importers, exporters, transporters, freight forwarders, and customs agents. Any single movement under the ACTS must cross the borders and involve at least 3 countries. Next, please. And the key features, benefits of the ACTS is that you will need a single guarantee for security to cover the duties and taxes at risk throughout the entire journey. Okay, this is, for example, in case you transport the goods through Malaysia going to Thailand, and there's something happens to the goods, either it's lost, stolen, or being robbed. You can, this will allow you to use the guarantee to pay for the duties in terms of the goods being landed in that transit country instead of going through that transit country. So, well, it may not happen usually, but just in case such thing happens, then you have the guarantee to pay for any duties that are due to the country that you're transiting, where the goods have landed instead of passing through that country. And also there's a single standard electronic customs declaration for each transit movement. This is, however, I must emphasize that whatever is the domestic permit or declaration that you require, you will need to comply. For example, if you go out from Singapore to Thailand through Malaysia, that means there's an export from Singapore to Thailand. So you need an export permit as per usual, in addition to this transit permit. Okay, so a single vehicle for transporting goods throughout the journey. You can use only one transport and same driver who will drive the truck out to the final destination. And there is an electronic messaging between customs officers in different countries to monitor the status of your truck movement. Okay, next please. So where can you transport your goods under the ACTS? So at the moment, there's this north-south corridor between Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, and there's the east-west corridor. Of course, pending Myanmar in 2021. You can actually pin at this Google Map location where it will help you to identify the location of the customs officers. So at the moment, as it is not multimodal yet, it's only applying to the land transportation. So it's only applicable for transactions from Singapore through Malaysia, through Thailand, or Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, or Myanmar via land. Okay. There are plans to look at the multimodal ACTS, but it's still in the initial phase. So it won't be ready soon. I guess when the time comes, we will announce for whatever is the future development for the multimodal ACTS. Next, please. So the future plans will include Indonesia, which is at the moment not geographically linked to the main corridors in ASEAN. There's a feasibility study, which is to be undertaken for future inclusion into the ACTS. There's also the Philippines, which is not currently geographically linked to the main corridors in ASEAN. Also, a feasibility study is to be undertaken for future inclusion into ACTS. And of course, Brunei, which is not connected through maybe countries like Singapore, is only connected to Malaysia by land in Borneo. A feasibility study is also undertaken for future inclusion into ACTS to involve the other remaining ASEAN countries. Next, please. So the cross-border trucking under COVID-19. The current arrangement is due to the COVID-19 border measures, the same vehicle is not allowed to transport goods from the country of departure to destination. I would like to emphasize that this is a temporary situation because of COVID-19, and there's some restrictions in AMS countries for allowing foreign drivers to enter their country. So hopefully after the COVID-19, this measure will be removed. And in Malaysia, for example, trucks transporting goods from Singapore to Thailand will need to switch to Thai prime movers at the Thai-Malaysian border. This applies to all trucking and is not unique to ACTS. And the use of a temporary vehicle permit in lieu of the AGV CBP, which is ASEAN Goods Vehicles Cross-Border Permit, which is required for your truck to have a permit before it can transport goods throughout the ASEAN member states countries. And the temporary vehicle permit number will be pre-assigned by customs and authorities for them to know the license plate number of the trucks prior to the start of the ACTS movement. So I must emphasize that this is the current arrangement because of the COVID-19 situation in Thailand, and also because Malaysia is still in the process of issuing the vehicle permit because of some internal domestic procedures, but they have informed us that they should be ready soon to issue such AGV CBP permits. This will be announced subsequently when they are ready. So what we can do now is every vehicle used to transport goods under ACTS needs to be allocated with an ASEAN Goods Vehicles Border Permit, AGV CBP, when all this like Malaysian issuance of permits, such permits are ready, and Thailand has removed their COVID-19 measures. And in future, which is to be implemented, the AGV CBP is issued by the Transport Authority in the ASEAN country where the vehicle is registered. So for Singapore, it must be registered with LTA, and you have to issue, for local transport companies, and LTA will issue the AGV CBP permit for Singapore trucks. You can obtain the information on this AGV CBP on this link that is provided here on the slide. They provide also additional information on the procedures as to how you could apply for these permits. Next, please. Okay, before I go on, I forgot to mention that we do have some questions, polling questions that we would like to fill up, and which will be closed at the end of this presentation. So I hope you would take time to fill up the polling questions to respond to the questions that we have asked. And in addition to that, of course, we have a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Okay. So do take some time to fill up these polling questions at the same time. Okay, now how to participate in the ACTS? Who can apply? All traders, which includes importers, exporters, transporters, freight forwarders, and customs agents, are eligible to use the ACTS to transport the goods across borders. But the traders must be registered as ACTS traders. Okay, ATT or non-ATT. Non-ATT means those who are not applied to be an authorized trader, where there will be facilitation in terms of when your cargo can be inspected. That means you need not bring your truck at the checkpoint, and the ICA or customs will check at the checkpoint and then will seal the containers. You can do it at your premises. Okay, so that means there's no interruption along the way when you move out the truck from your warehouse. Okay, but of course, upon you reaching the ICA checkpoints or customs borders, there's still the authority or jurisdiction where the customs officers may decide to check if they suspect there's anything wrong with the consignment or anything suspicious with the consignment. Otherwise, if everything is good, the truck can go through. Okay. Next, please. So the step one is you register as an ACTS trader. You are required to be registered as an ACTS trader with Singapore Customs and be provided with a user account in ACTS before you can submit a declaration in ACTS. So you will have to submit a direct declaration online via the ACTS system. You will need to complete the following application forms, which can obtain from this link, and email them to customs and customsgov.sg. The forms are trader registration form and employee declaration details and authorization form. So in addition to the trader registering themselves as the principal trader, you will need also to register your employee who will make the declarations. And also, if you authorize another transport agency to truck out the goods for you, you also have to indicate. Next, please. Then upon registering as ACTS trader, Singapore Customs will issue a trader identification number or TIN to the registered ACTS trader, also known as the principal trader, and a personal ID to each registered employees for the submission of declarations in ACTS. So only those that have registered can be allowed to submit a declaration. A principal can also authorize a different legal entity to submit the ACTS declaration on their behalf by submitting a broker representative authorization letter. Okay, so if you need like a service provider or a freight forwarder to handle the declarations for you, you need to authorize them and provide all this information. Both the employee of the principal trader and the representative or broker authorized by the principal trader can submit the declaration in ACTS. Qualified ACTS traders who are keen to become an authorized transit trader are to submit the ATT application form. Okay, I will explain subsequently on this ATT. Next, please. Okay, before that, step 2 for transporting these goods by ACTS is you need a guarantee. ACTS traders are required to lodge a single journey or multiple journey guarantee in the country of departure where the goods are loaded. Okay, so if it's ordered from Singapore, you need a guarantee from Singapore and submitted to Singapore Customs. The single journey guarantee covers only single transit operation by the principal concerned, covering the full amount of duties, taxes, and other charges for which the goods are liable. So assuming you are crossing only one transit country, then you will have to calculate how much would the duties or taxes be for the goods in transiting Malaysia in the event that it didn't pass through Malaysia, but it has landed in Malaysia. Okay, but if you are going to transit through more than one transit country, then you have to calculate how much is the duties in the next transit country. Okay, the multiple journey guarantee covers several transit operations up to a given reference amount set to equal 100% of the total amounts of duties and other charges that may be incurred for goods under the principles transit operations over a period of at least 1 week. So actually, you don't have to worry about so much about the calculation. The system would automatically calculate and provide you with the indicative amount when you submit your declaration, because each AMS countries have indicated what are the dutiable goods and the duties that they apply for the respective goods. So it's all within the system. And for the issuance of the guarantee undertaking letter for transit operations, Singapore accepts all banks and finance companies that are registered with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Okay, next please. And how do you apply for customs permit? Existing domestic procedures will continue to apply because your goods are considered export from Singapore. So you need an export permit from customs. That doesn't change. Traders are required to obtain a customs permit via TradeNet to account for the importation, exportation, and transshipment of goods, in addition to submitting a declaration through ACTS. So remember, ACTS is only for the smooth flow or transaction without additional documentation when you transit through another ASEAN member states. Okay, either one or two ASEAN member states before you reach your final destination. When you reach the final ASEAN member state destination, then all the import duties, wherever licensor will apply. Okay. In the TradeNet permit application, you should indicate ACTS movement in the trader's remark field. This is to facilitate our monitoring of the truck, and also at the same time, we can cross-check with the permit declaration and the ACTS declaration, if any. Normal controls and requirements for TradeNet permit applications, example, proper authorization or licenses from the competent authorities, will still apply. Okay, so remember the domestic procedures and permit or licensing requirements are still required. There's no change to that with respect to your exports or when you come in with respect to your imports. And of course, certain requirements for transshipment, like cross-border, not cross-border, inter-gateway transfers, all those will be required as per usual. Okay, next please. Okay, how can you make an ACTS declaration through the ACTS system? Registered traders must submit a declaration in the ACTS to initiate a transit movement. Okay, goods that are not prohibited or excluded in any of the ASEAN member states involved in the transit movement are allowed to be moved under the ACTS. So if you need to know, there are certain goods which are prohibited by respective ASEAN member states. And also there are goods that are restricted, which are usually dutiable goods, where member states will not allow for this good to be included in the ACTS movement. Other than that, for control goods, these goods are allowed as long as you have obtained the relevant approvals, licenses, or permits from the competent authorities. Okay, so there's no such restrictions on these items. It's only prohibited and some dutiable goods. Okay. Dutiable and prohibited goods in Singapore are not allowed to be moved under ACTS. So for Singapore, we are very clear, dutiable and prohibited goods are not allowed. And for Singapore, of course, our dutiable goods are not that many, mainly cigarettes, alcohol, and maybe some petroleum. So these are not allowed for ACTS movement. Upon the approval of your ACTS declaration, you will need to print a copy of the issued transit accompanying document or TAD for the truck driver to use for cargo clearance at the land checkpoints. Actually, we're also considering that this is another bureaucracy where you have to print the permit. But of course, this is only to facilitate in some ASEAN member states countries. If you don't have documentary proof, it's difficult for you to go through the transit movement. They may need endorsement by the respective customs officers, but everything is in the system. This should be smooth flowing. is only to confirm that your goods are ACTS and that the movement can be facilitated. Okay, next please. So all incoming and outgoing ACTS trucks are to be physically present at the land checkpoints for clearance. The truck driver will need to present the physical copy of the TAD, corresponding customs permit, and supporting documents for cargo clearance. Please note that domestic clearance procedure will still apply. So we need to re-emphasize that. So how you can save in terms of documentation is that when you leave Singapore, you go through Malaysia, for example, you don't need to apply for whatever is Malaysian internal documentation before you reach Thailand. Okay, so your ACTS transit permit will help you move through Malaysia, and when you reach Thailand, then only all the other domestic requirements for imports apply. Okay, next please. Okay, if you wish to be an authorized transit trader, this means that you are given some flexibility or simplification where you can actually load your goods from your warehouse, and you need not present your goods at the checkpoints or at the customs office of departure for inspection of the customs officers or customs or IC officers. Usage of your own approved seals for vehicles and containers in transit will be allowed. Okay. Otherwise, if you're not an ATT company, you have to stop your cargo at the customs office of departure, and after inspection, then we will use the customs seal. Either customs or ICA officers at the checkpoint will use the customs seals to seal your cargo container. Okay, but if you load it from your warehouse, it will not need to be inspected at the customs office of departure. Okay? And authorization to start movement of goods under ACTS from the designated traders premises or pre-approved by customs. Okay, so as an ATT, these are the flexibilities or the simplified procedures that we would grant such companies. But before that, there must be an application to apply as an authorized transit trader. Next, please. So how to qualify? To qualify for the ATT status, the company must have a valid customs account. That means it must be registered with customs. Be registered as transit traders by the Customs Administration in ACTS, and also register your interest to be the principal for this ACTS transit movement. And the applicants also need to have frequent transit movements, and they must lodge full banker's guarantee with customs. Applicants to self-declare and fulfill all the criteria in the ATT application form in customs website. Okay? You must have good compliance records with Singapore Customs, and you must have adequate pre-employment screening of staff in sensitive areas and security measures to secure the safety of business and the supply chain. So this is not really a fully like an STP, strategic trade partner companies or AO companies, but it's a simplified procedures and a requirement slightly less rigorous than the AO or STP. But the important thing is you must have good compliance records, and you must have sufficient pre-employment screening of your staff and have sufficient security measures around your premises and also across your business supply chain. Okay, next please. Okay, when you wish to apply for ATT, you should submit a form to Singapore Customs. There's a customs website where we should provide the link for you to go direct to the form. And if you need further assistance while filling up the form, you could contact our customs schemes branch, and they will attend to your queries. Okay. If it's not available in this website, we'll provide the direct link to you after this session so that you can access the ACTS website from customs. First, to register as ACTS principal trader, and also to apply for the ATT if you qualify for it. Okay. Next, please. So, okay, this is the website, ACTS webpage for you to access, and you have more information from here. So I hope if you wish, you could maybe try out first and see what are the information that you need to provide to become an ATT. and at the same time to understand the procedures better. And also if you need assistance or maybe to need to engage another transport provider, then you could refer them to the same web page for them to understand the procedures. Okay. Next, please. Okay. Now we go to the ASEAN single window. What is the ASEAN single window? So if you need to know all these connectivity initiatives are also part of the trade facilitation initiatives amongst ASEAN as well as the WTO members under the trade facilitation agreement. Is basically to engage or rather to get countries who are members of either the FTA or the ASEAN grouping to actually facilitate transactions through electronic platform and to facilitate the declaration requirements with respect to either permit or other customs requirements. So what is the ASEAN single window? The environment where national single windows of ASEAN member states operate and integrate. Okay? It facilitates cross-border electronic exchange of trade documents in ASEAN, and it aims to expedite customs clearance, reduce transaction time and costs, and make trade seamless. Okay, next please. The ASEAN single window and related provisions under the ASEAN trade facilitation provides that member states shall undertake necessary measures to establish and operate their respective national single windows and the ASEAN single window in accordance with the provisions of the agreement to establish and implement the ASEAN single window and the protocol to establish and implement the ASEAN single window. Okay, so these are the two protocols where the provisions of enabling the ASEAN single window to operate across ASEAN member states. An application of information technology. Member states also, where applicable, shall apply information technology in customs operations based on internationally accepted standards for expeditious customs clearance and release of goods. So that's why all these initiatives are important, and it's crucial for member states to have electronic transactions. And we are actually at this phase where we have already started amongst some member states. And to explain to you, we'll go to the next slide, please. So the key benefits, before that, the key benefits to the traders for such ASEAN single window is reduced business costs associated with handling and transporting paper documentation. It also ensures document integrity, that there's no alteration or falsification of the document. Everything is in the system. And it also reduced lead time for the clearance of goods, because both customs authorities have information on the goods online, and it's easier for them to conduct whatever risk assessment they need to do prior to the arrival of the goods. Next, please. Okay, so at the moment, what can be transmitted via the ASEAN single window? Okay, all AMS on board exchanging the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, or ATIGA, Electronic Certificate of Origin Form D. So since December 2019, the Electronic Certificate of Origin Form D across all 10 ASEAN member states have already commenced. And in March 2021, we have started the ASEAN Customs Declaration document, that means exchanging our import and export document information or permit declaration with the remaining, first with these 5 countries among Singapore, Cambodia, Myanmar, Malaysia, and Thailand. And then there'll be remaining 5 AMS or ASEAN member states who will be progressively joining in this ACDD declaration of document sharing. If you note, for example, there are some declaration fields which are applicable to both, for example, Singapore and Malaysia. So when we transmit, or when traders transmit the permit declaration, the export information will become the import permit information in Malaysia. Okay, but of course there are some common fields and there are some additional fields that you need to add on with respect to your either export or import information, which is actually an additional requirement by respective member states. So we only share those that are commonly applied, or where both or more ASEAN member states are requiring in the permit declaration, the basic information. Then beyond 2021, we are looking at all these electronic exchanges with respect to the e-Phyto certificate, e-Animal Health certificate, and e-Food Safety certificate. Okay, this will be work in progress. Of course, we will update you as and when all these arrangements have been finalized, and we could commence, or traders could commence making this application or submit these documents through the ASEAN single window. Okay, next please. Okay, what are the benefits of the Artiga e-Form D, which is currently being applied across the AO company, across the principal traders under the ACTS, under the ASW. First, the preferential certificate of origin allows traders to enjoy preferential tariff rates for imports into ASEAN member states, okay, which means lower cost of doing business. And there is more convenience with respect to the less risk of misplacement or damage, as you need not print or send hard copy Form D to your overseas clients. Okay, and at the same time, there will be more certainty because the granting of preferential treatment will be based on the data already received by customs. Okay, so it's already electronic and it's considered safe, and there's no falsification concerns. And then customs can make a quick decision with respect to the respective preferential treatment. Next, please. Okay, what is the benefits of the ACDD? Okay, for the exchange of the documents is a specific set of TradeNet export permit data. You don't need additional information required. You only need, of course, at the domestic level, if there is any. And of course, it will facilitate the exchange of information across AMS. That means it's supplement risk management for the respective customs authorities. And it will increase business competitiveness because the potential reduction in customs clearance time for consignments supported by the ACDD would actually benefit traders and businesses. Okay. Next, please. Okay, how do you register and participate? First, there's no change to the Form D application procedures in TradeNet. It's the same, it's just that it's submitted online. Fill in the registration application and transmit the the Artiga e-Form D via the TradeNet backend. Okay, there will be procedures in terms of explanation of how you could do this if you are new to it. I'm sure some of you have already done this, and I hope it's a seamless process and it has helped your businesses. So for the ACDD, there's no change to the TradeNet permit application procedures. It's the same. You need to fill in the participation form, and you need to transmit the ADD through TradeNet. Okay. Okay. Now, next, please. For the future plans, ASEAN is exploring the expansion of the ASW through linking up with the ASEAN Dialogue Partners. Okay, our ASEAN Dialogue Partners includes countries like China, Australia, Japan, Korea, and there are plans to actually expand the connectivity of the ASW with these countries. Okay? It's still work in progress. Maybe the first we have sort of progressed to almost ready state will be China. Okay, next please. Okay, so you're welcome to visit our customs webpage for more information. Do click into these links, the Artiga e-Form D and the ACDD. Okay, so I would like to invite questions from the floor. For ACTS, I also have my colleague here, Wei Loon, to maybe provide some operational information. I see some questions already in the chat box. I would maybe, if there's anyone who wants to speak, and then I know we shall open the floor. Thank you. Okay, I see some questions here in the chat box.
Madam Fauza, maybe let me, I have actually been noting of the questions that our audience has been asking through the chat box, as well as some of them have also privately asked us. So maybe let me start the Q&A session going. Maybe this first question to customs first. There are some questions. Give me a minute. Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
For number one, as a freight forwarder acting on behalf of a principal that is authorized by a ACTS registered trader, does the freight forwarder need to apply for ACTS as well to submit the permit?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Wailun. I'm from Singapore Customs. So I'm actually in the same team as Madam Fauzia in driving this ACTS project. So thank you for the question. So let me address the question about this freight forwarder who is appointed by the company, by the principal. So okay, if the company is wants to start the ACTS operation from Singapore, we need to identify who is the principal trader that will apply for the banker's guarantee. It can be either the exporter or it can be the freight forwarder. So this really depends on the business arrangement. So if in the case that you want that the freight forwarder is supposed to apply for the banker's guarantee, then it means that they will also submit the declaration through ACTS. Yeah.
Maybe I can clarify that further. So for example, the same thing for our permit declaration at the moment, right? There are companies who submit their application directly. There are those that go through declaring agent. So the declaring agent will be the one having to submit the principal if he is also doing it on behalf of many companies. Then it's better for him to be the principal trader. But there could be a scenario where the principal trader only appoints maybe the freight forwarder for certain transaction, but he still wants to be the principal trader. Okay, so that means the principal trader will be the one making the declaration, but the freight forwarder may be the one handling the transport. Okay, so there are two ways how we can look into it. Either the freight forwarder assume the responsibility of the principal trader, or they're just providing a service to the principal trader. Okay, so it depends on the commercial arrangement. The freight forwarder can also be another principal trader and then handle not just this other principal trader or company, it's also other companies. But when the particular transaction goes through the ACTS, there's only one principal trader. Okay, that we recognize either, for that transaction. So either the freight forwarder assuming the responsibility of the principal trader, and then that means he handles everything, or the principal trader assume the responsibility as the principal trader, but authorize a transport provider to transport the goods for them. So remember, the principal trader must submit a guarantee. So whoever is paying that, that guarantee, either for the single journey or multiple journey, should be the principal trader. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Madam Fauza. On the point of guarantees, there's actually a related question as well. There is a question for guarantee. Is this a one-time guarantee until the value is exhausted? Or is there a need to have weekly guarantees to work back any difference in values?
There are two types of guarantee. Are you referring to a single journey guarantee or a multiple journey?
A multiple journey one. I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah, multiple journey
guarantee. Once the application has been received by Singapore Customs, we will issue a validity period, which is for 1 year. Okay, so during this period of 1 year, the trader can use this guarantee multiple times. Okay, so for instance, let's say we grant you a guarantee amount of, let's say, $100,000. Then for your first transaction, the guarantee that you are supposed to account for this transaction is let's say $10,000. So you can proceed with this transaction. Okay, and let's say maybe next week you have another transaction is, let's say, $20,000. So you can still proceed. So once the transaction has ended, meaning that the operation has ended in the country of destination, this guarantee amount will be credited back to the original amount. So you can still use it continuously. So it is not for one-time use. You can use it for multiple times within this 1 year validity period. Yeah.
I think the value should not change if we don't utilize the guarantee, right? It only happens when the goods are accidentally or somehow being infiltrated and then enter into the transit state, then they will require you to pay the duties. They will always go back to the principle for the guarantee for those duties that it should be applied. Otherwise, there's no need for the use of the guarantee.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Perhaps understand. Maybe just one more on this ACTS. By using ACTS, in addition, the companies will still need to apply for export and import permit, correct?
Yes.
Because it doesn't mean that ACTS doesn't. Okay. Okay, maybe let us move on to LTA. Eugene, for a minute. We do have some questions related to the vehicles itself. So Eugene, the first question from the audience would actually be, should the chassis be Malaysia or Thailand registered too? Should it be registered in Thailand or Malaysia too, if there's any cross-border land transportation required?
Hi, good morning to everyone. Yeah, my first time speaking. So thanks for the question. Very useful question. So on that, for the vehicle that should be used for the operations, we're looking at any vehicle actually, so long as their host government has issued them an ASEAN goods vehicle cross-border permit. So for LTA, we're looking to issue our own quota of 500 permits in third quarter this year. For the other countries, such as say Malaysia or Thailand, actually we have no view of when they are going to issue their permits. Although this is being coordinated at ASEAN level, and we understand that they're all aiming to get it done sometime this year as well. So yeah, it doesn't really matter where the vehicle is registered, so long as they have a permit to do the operations. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Eugene. Maybe a follow-up question. If a Malaysian registered truck is being used, can we confirm that the AGV CBP will be issued in Malaysia, even though the goods is collected from Singapore to Thailand via Malaysia?
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Okay, sure. For example, if the goods are actually being collected from Singapore to Thailand and were transit through Malaysia, and the vehicle being used is actually a Malaysian registered truck, can we confirm that the AGV, the ASEAN Goods Vehicle Cross-Border Permit, is actually supposed to be issued in Malaysia?
Okay, so as explained earlier, we don't have a strict requirement on where the vehicle needs to be registered, so long as it has a permit to undertake the ACTS operations. So it could well have been Singapore vehicle as well, or a Thai vehicle. All are acceptable.
I think just to clarify the question, at the moment there are some Singapore companies that use Malaysian trucks, right? So they will need the Malaysian permit to move the truck to or through Malaysia. Not so much coming in Singapore that they will need a Malaysian permit. Maybe you can help us understand that. Going out from Singapore, they need the Malaysian permit to transport the truck through Malaysia. But coming into Singapore, do they need, if it's a Malaysian truck, do they need a Malaysian permit, or there's no need permit for them to come into Singapore?
So for Singapore, we accept vehicles that either hold on to the ASEAN Goods Vehicle Cross-Border Permit that is issued in any ASEAN member state.
Okay.
Yeah. as well as if they don't have this permit, then they can also apply to LTA for a goods vehicle permit, ASEAN goods vehicle permit. So basically, this is the pre-existing arrangement through which all goods vehicle enter Singapore even prior to ACTS.
Okay, so maybe in the case where we use Singapore truck going into Malaysia, so there's enough for us to just, or for companies to just use the Singapore permit, and it can be allowed to go through Malaysia, Thailand, right? Yeah.
Yes, the understanding is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you both Eugene and Madam Fauzia. Madam Fauzia, can I come back to you? There is this question on the definition of frequent transit movement. So how frequent would actually be frequent to apply for ACTS?
For the ATT, right?
Yeah, for this we have a sense of the case-by-case basis. So I mean, for ATT, I think we also consider that some companies maybe it's a newly set up establishment. So I mean, if there's really interest from the company to try out the ACTS, I think we are more than willing to explore. I mean, with the company to try out this ATT operation. Yeah.
I think importantly, we look at the company as a whole, including all the other criteria. And the frequency, of course, if, for example, yes, a new companies or maybe a new way of transporting via this ACTS, then maybe you may not have a lot of transactions. But what would be your future plans? And would it help if you were granted ATT to expedite your future shipment? Okay? So I can say that there's no fixed number, but it's on a case-by-case basis. And our schemes and engagement branch will be the one doing the processing. As far as possible, we try to facilitate if the companies have good record. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that clarification. Perhaps we move on to the ASEAN single window questions. There are two questions related. For back-to-back Form D, would that be digital in future? Would that be also using eForm D in future?
Okay, I think there's something that we are looking into that. We will update and perhaps inform, when they're ready. At the moment, it's because under ASEAN Single is singular transaction across countries, but when they are ready, I guess it may include the back-to-back permit. Form D as well. Yeah. So it's in the process.
And the follow-up question. I see. Thank you so much. The follow-up question is also, what happens if the importing country says that they do not receive the eForm D?
Okay, that should not happen because we will have the record in the system and you can trace that transaction, electronic transaction. But what we note is that there are certain ports in other ASEAN member states where may still require the hard copy because of either their poor connectivity or, maybe in terms of their electronic system with respect to the internal domestic transaction across their different ports may not be that good. So while we say there's no need for physical copy, but there could be instances where they may be asked for hard copy by certain ports. But because it's submitted electronically, all the customs authorities should have the same documents inside the system. So there shouldn't be any issue with respect to one authority says, oh, I did not receive it. Then I can prove from my customs system, oh, we have sent it to you, so things like that, yeah.
So as far as Singapore is concerned, we will set all electronic copies.
Yeah.
So in the event that, let's say, businesses will encounter any of these issues when importing into other ASEAN countries, do share with us your feedback so that we can also raise these issues at the appropriate ASEAN forum to find out what is the issue and why there are certain countries that are still not accepting the electronic copies. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perhaps just a few more final two questions. This is still related to the AGVCPP. So I'll come back to you, Eugene. This is, I believe, a clarification from the company. They have given an example that perhaps they have a sister company in Malaysia that operates cross-border trucks, and they use these trucks to transport the goods from Singapore to Thailand. In this scenario, does this mean that the truck AGV-CBP will be issued in Malaysia and it's sufficient?
Yes, it's correct. The understanding is correct. yeah, so long as they have AGVCBP that so if it's a Malaysian registered truck, it needs to apply for a permit from the Malaysian government, and if it's issued by the Malaysian government under the AFAF-GATE, all other ASEAN member states are obliged to allow entry of such vehicles into their respective territories.
I see. Thank you so much. Perhaps just one more question as we are nearing the tail end of today's presentation, and this question is actually for Stanley. Stanley, how is ACTS, ASEAN Single Window, actually going to impact efficiency and cost for SMEs in terms of freight?
I can't open my video. Oh, okay, now I got it. Now, regarding this question, just I believe Madam Fauzia gave a very good and concise presentation regarding the trade facilitation, the risk assessment, and also the lead time. And all these trade facilitation allows them to be efficiently cross-border. And also, if we're talking about the lead time, that means is the minimum time spent at the borders with this ACTS. So this way will reduce the cost of operations and thus giving efficiency. And I believe that it is good that we have this cross-border as alternatives between the ASEAN member states, especially in the GMS, because we need that instead of the ocean side where we have to load it on ships and then discharge and all that. So this transportation by road is a very good alternative, and then it's also facilitate trade between the AMS. And I think that it is good that the ACTS will allow that to have increase in the trade among ASEAN states, you know. So I think later on when they add on the other countries like Philippines, Indonesia, and Brunei, that will be a holistic approach to this ACTS. And this is a good move that we have this. And I think that bearing in mind that also we have the risk assessment, if it's electronic, then we already can anticipate the safety and security of the cargo itself. And this also reduces the cost of operations. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stanley. And I just want to thank everyone, the speakers and the audience for joining us in this session today. Before you leave, can I invite the audience to take part in this end of webinar poll? If there's any other questions that you feel have not been addressed in this seminar, you can actually also write to us, either SBF or SLA, so that we can clarify it further for you. And with this, we'd like to thank everyone for your time today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Friday when we will be going through the rest of the ASEAN FTAs. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.